FM 107.1.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 7, February of Going Wild in the Highlands. We're in the middle of summer and let me just describe the scene to you. It is cold, it's about 13 degrees outside, it's been raining non-stop for 24 hours, but nevertheless we're going to be upbeat and make the most of it. Today we're going to be talking about minor birds of different types. We're going to be talking about possums. We're going to talk about what we've been up to and all kinds of other stuff. So listen in. If we don't cover something in this episode, you'll hear it in our bonus episode halfway through the month. So Lou, let's talk first about what we've been doing.
Well, we went out together, didn't we, to Mount Waratah?
We did.
The
We
fire
did
trail.
a lovely walk up the Mount Waratah fire trail. Pretty steep,
But not too bad.
and the view at the top was worth it when we got there.
Fabulous view.
Yeah, we
Fabulous
thoroughly
view.
enjoyed that. And another thing we did together was we went to a planting at one of the local wineries, put in a whole lot more koala feed trees. And we had lots of kids come down from Sydney to help with the planting. It was great to see young people at a planting.
It was. And they were very enthusiastic. They were going like
They
the
got into
clappers.
it.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe how much we knocked over in a short period of time. And actually, back to the Mount Waratah trip, on the way home from that trip, you saved a life.
I did, yes. We're all about saving lives on this show. We just said goodbye to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we were racing off back home, and coming towards me on the other side of the road was this tortoise.
Oh.
It was definitely one of those long-necked tortoises, and there were cars racing
Yeah, it was a
across
really
that
busy
road.
patch of Old Hume Highway.
Absolutely. So I turned around and I parked a car on the side of the road. I went towards it, and sure enough, it was a turtle. He was terrified. So I picked him up and I just took him in the direction that he was heading. And just as I was putting it on the side of the road, you whizzed past.
Yes, yeah, wondering what on
and so,
earth you were doing.
And so Floss stops and she took a couple of pictures, and we went away feeling we'd hopefully saved a
Done
life.
a good thing, yeah. Another thing that I've done since we last recorded was that I did the walk to 60-foot Falls. I haven't done that one before, and it was delightful. And I think that one of the things I liked about it was that although I didn't take my dog this time, it's a walk that you could do with your dog. And you could also do it with small children. It's really quite a even, slightly inclined walk. But when you get to the end, the falls are gorgeous. And there are nice little patches. We could have included that in our talk about
You could paddle.
places to cool your heels. You
Yes.
could definitely paddle with young children there.
So that's the one where the waterfall drops off and the road is going.
You can see the
you
highway.
can see and hear the highway going straight over. And how
the
many
flying
times have I
trucks,
been
as
on
they
that
say.
road and I've looked down and I've gone, I wonder how you get there.
Actually, I got there from a walk that you and I know, where we park at the car park for the Police Youth Club near
Yes.
Mittagong Pool.
Yes, that's how I do it. I do
Yeah.
that walk.
Yeah, well, it's just, you
and
go
that's
to
where
the end of it.
That's where I saw the butterfly. You know, the Maclay butterfly? That was where it was. But the falls are really steep, aren't they?
Down the
They
bottom.
dro-
So
they drop.
when you do the walk from there, you get to the top of the falls.
Yeah,
and
it's
then,
no trouble to get there.
Yeah,
No,
but then
it's-
going down, it's not too bad. Look, I really
always
enjoyed
do
it. It was lovely. And I also did the Fairy Bower Falls walk for the first time.
Yes, that's a lovely walk.
It is a lovely walk, and the falls.
So you start
are
out
so
in Bundanoon
beautiful. Yes,
and go into
inside
Moreton.
National Park.
Yes.
Yeah, I thoroughly recommend it. It was really enjoyable.
That's a bit steep.
Yes, yeah, you've
Little
got to
bit.
be a bit more prepared for that one.
Yeah, but I reckon, kids could do it, 7, 8, yeah?
Well, in fact, I took a photo of a family at the bottom of the falls, and yeah, they'd made it and they looked pretty cool and comfortable. So what about things you've been seeing in the garden?
Well, of course, all the great flowering of spring is kind of over, but there's one bush that I'm very proud of. It's called crinkle bush. It's a native bush. It looks a bit like a white grevillea.
Oh, right.
It's got those stamens all sticking out of it, and the insects love it.
It's not a Lamatia, is it?
It is a Lamatia. It's Lamatia ciliifolia. Yes. And it's really easy to take cuttings from. And I've got 6 cuttings from it. And I'm just going to have a whole bed of it. Because we know we're short on insects.
Yes.
The world needs more insects.
That's right. Yeah.
And I have 7, 8 different kind of insects,
yes.
including native bees.
I've got it at home as well. I've got about 4 and covered in insects and flowers for a long time. It's just finishing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I am pleased about is there's a young butcher bird come into the bottom of my garden, which is the messy part of my garden, which is basically the best part of my garden, let's face it. And he's been doing rather well. I've been watching him. He's not being fed. He's doing it all himself. He's sometimes in the leaf litter. He flicks things over and looks for those things that you believe.
So how do you know it's a young bird?
Well, it's brown and white.
Right.
You know, it looks sort of gormless. But it's not.
Don't tell him.
It's not gormless. And I've seen him in the trees tearing up bark and getting worms and getting grubs. He's very good.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think he's probably been left by his parents now, although they keep in touch by song, I think.
Ah.
But he's got to make his own way in life.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put up a big poster saying "to let" at the back of my yard, and just hope that he moves in permanently because they sing so beautifully.
They do sing beautifully. They've got 1 or 2 unattractive habits. They apparently will take their dead prey and hang it in a tree, although I've never actually seen a butcher bird do that.
I think I have seen it.
Yeah.
I think I have. But let's face it, we got butchers.
That's right. And they hang meat too. Yeah. So something that I've seen in my garden of late is some galahs. I was visited by a family of galahs recently, and the parent was feeding the young galah by regurgitation. So it brought to mind that we should probably talk about A, galahs, they're gorgeous, we see them all the time, and B, this method of feeding that they and many other birds use. So I think everybody around here knows what a galah is. We've got plenty of them in the Highlands. They have a pink body and grey wings and a pink face and a white, very mobile crest. And they're beautiful little acrobats. We often see them on the wires around here doing all kinds of antics. And historically in Australia, we used to call people a galah. He's a bit of a galah.
Yeah.
You don't
Because they were
hear it
silly.
so much.
No,
Yeah,
it's an
because
old-fashioned strain.
yeah,
isn't
we
it?
should bring it back. It's so descriptive and gorgeous, and you can just imagine the galahs playing. They're one of the most playful birds. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
So they're a cockatoo. And they are monogamous. They will pair up for life and stick with the same mate, and both parents will look after the young. And in fact, the feeding that I saw, the male was feeding the baby. You can tell a male galah from a female galah because
It's got a red eye.
no.
Yes, it has.
The female has a red eye.
Oh, all
and
right.
a
One of
male
them's got
has
red
a
eye.
brown eye. Yeah. So you can remember for galahs, it's pink for girls. Was it tricky of me? Sorry.
It was tricky. Yes.
So these are beautiful birds. They love to hang around in big groups, and I've read that you can get groups of 1,000 or more out back, but I haven't seen anything like that.
Well, I think it's something to do with the grain train.
Yes, they love grains, and in fact, they're really useful for moving casuarina seeds and acacia seeds. They eat, and they then move them to another spot and deposit them with a little bit of fertiliser on them and plant them into a new area. So this male bird was feeding the young with this behaviour that we see in many birds called regurgitation feeding. When the baby is quite a young bird, the adults will leave them and go and feed themselves up, and they store the food in an area called the crop, which is kind of a pouch in their digestive system in their throat. And then they'll fly back to the nest or the area where the nestling is, and they regurgitate from that crop directly into the nestling's beak. So that as they're carrying the food back to their nestling, they're not vulnerable to somebody else coming along and pinching that food. They've got it stored on board and it's not readily accessible to any other predators. Then when they return to their nestling, they can just regurgitate it straight into their beak. They also do this, apparently, as a courting behaviour. A male bird will try and feed or regurge into a female bird just to impress her with what a good provider he is, saying, it'd be worth having a baby with me because I can look after them.
Wow.
Louise is looking a little bit sick.
Spitting into your would-be mate, hoping for the best, I just want you to know, Spit, that I love you.
And I'm a good provider. I actually read that some pet birds will regurgitate onto their owners as a demonstration of how much they love them.
Oh, it's getting worse.
All right, let's move on. Something else that I've got in my garden at the moment is a possum. We've got a little area where the gutter kind of does a turn and it's just a quiet little corner of guttering. And this possum comes and spends the day there, not every day at all, but every 4 or 5 days.
Is he a brush tail?
I actually don't know, because every time we see it, it's in the gutter and all we can see is its back coming up from out of the gutter. So let's talk about the two different types of possums that we're likely to have in the area. So brush tails, let's talk about brush tails.
Well, brush tails don't make nests exactly.
No,
whereas
that's right.
ringtails do.
Yes.
They make drays.
Yeah. So my possum hasn't made a nest. So
no,
that's
it's just
one
snuggling up in a gutter.
That's right.
Yeah, which they are into snuggling.
Yes.
They will snuggle into the corner of a shed. Corners are good.
Yeah. So possums are, we should say, to state the bleeding obvious, possums are nocturnal animals. And so during the day, they look for a shelter somewhere. They're marsupials. So they have a pouch and they carry their young in the pouch. It's usually latched onto a teat for, I think it's about 5 months in possums before they emerge from the pouch. So they look during the day for places to shelter. This is any possums. And they frequently, as Lou will tell you, find their way into your roof. Brushtails are the more common of the two.
They're certainly the more visual ones, the more vocal ones. My goodness me, they're noisy. They're bigger and they're more of a sort of bruiser type. They don't like other possums. They don't really like anything much. They're very aggressive and territorial, so we notice them a lot.
Yes.
The ringtails seem to be much more mild-mannered, smaller, sweeter-natured.
And they're
quiet.
more likely to be communal as well, I think, aren't they?
Ringtails?
Yeah. So all possums are very territorial, as Lou said, and they mark their area with a scent from glands on their chest and their back end, basically. And they don't like to have any other possums coming into their area. So if we move them around, if we take them from their local area, this is not a good thing.
Well, this is all going towards this thing I wanted to tell you about with the roof. If you get a brush tail in your roof and you're not dead thrilled about it,
which who's going to be?
You can ring up the possum man and he will remove it. But there is a problem with removing possums and putting them bang into another piece of bush, because they are so territorial and they're likely to get their hair torn out. Frankly, it's I don't think it's the greatest solution, but I have a solution and it does work. And that is, you turn the light on in the roof during the day, well, for several days, and the possum will move out.
Right, because they want a dark, cozy spot.
They don't. I don't know. They don't want the light when they're curled
Trying
up
to
and sleeping
snooze.
during the day.
Yeah.
They want darkness. Perhaps they feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I didn't believe it worked, and it did work. Yeah.
Excellent. So then once they're
How
out,
simple is that?
you need to find the spot where they're getting in and close it off.
Yes. Yes, you've got to seal it off. That day, you've got to block off the entrance. So you've got to have isolated where he's coming in.
While they're out.
While they're out. And
yeah.
don't seal it in. Don't seal them in.
I also
'cause
read,
that could be nasty.
I've never heard about this before, but I read you can put something called quassia chips, Quassia. They're wood chips that you can
Right.
get from the hardware. And apparently it's a smell that they don't like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Lou and I, in general, do not encourage people to put up nest boxes. But in the case of possums, I think from all my reading that they sound like a really good idea because possums are looking for hollows or drays, as they call them, that the ringtails make.
Well, the ringtails make their own drays.
Yes.
They're like Bin Laden. They don't sleep in the same place 2 nights running.
No, that's right. Because
So they make several drays and they move around from one to the other so that powerful owls, who absolutely adore their favourite food is ringtail possum,
Oh, right.
don't get wise to which dray they're in.
Right.
Yeah. Very commonly, you'll walk alongside a creek, you'll see one ringtail dray, and you walk a little bit further, 100 metres, and you'll see another and then
one.
another.
And they all belong to the same ringtail.
I assume they do, unless they've
Yeah.
got some cooperative thing going on where, can I sleep at your place and you can sleep at mine? Who knows? Who knows?
So this little one is in the gutter. He only comes every few days and he's small. You know, he's in the gutter and I can only see his back poking up. His, I'm saying, could be a female. So I think it's small and it's
Brown or grey, would you say? Or
it
probably
seems
a
to
bit
have
of
a
both?
little bit of reddish colour on it as well.
that
We
suggests
hardly
more
get to see
brush tail
any
to
of
me.
it. Yeah. Don't know.
I think of ringtail as being a bit greyer
Right?
and brushtail being a little browner. But I guess that's not an absolute rule. But that's what I think.
Yeah. I'll just have to keep my eyes on it and see what see if I can work it out.
It sounds like he might be trying to find a new home.
Yes,
This time of year,
Yeah.
young everywhere are trying to find new territory that's
yes, so
safe.
perhaps it is a young. So I read that one thing that you can do is make little homes for them you can get a possum box or you can make a home by getting those coir-lined wire baskets, planters, and you
Yep.
turn one upside down and make a
Yeah, I've
a
seen
little-
that, yes.
Yeah, apparently the wires carers recommend those.
Right.
Making a little hutch out of that. You can find ways to do that online.
Right.
And I also read that for both types of possums, their most common, most popular food or what they would eat mostly in the wild is foliage. And people recommend that we're careful about feeding them fruit because they can eat a certain amount of it, but particularly in the ringtail, it can cause bloat, which can be a fatal disease.
I can imagine that. I mean, fruit's full of fructose, isn't it? It's a sugar. So I can imagine it might bloat you.
Yeah. So people recommend in general, if you can do it, get a possum box or create some sort of little home for them because in gardens there aren't that many options for them to make their own drays and find hollows and so on. But they don't recommend feeding. So you wanted to talk about a new term that you've just learnt. Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. Well, I disappeared down a rabbit hole digitally. I was reading a newsletter, which I get regularly, and they talked about something called block gliding.
What's
Have
that?
you heard of block gliding?
No, tell me about that.
Well, neither had I. So what's block gliding? And to tell you the truth, I've read around it since, and it's quite confusing what it really is, but it basically seems to be a feature of sandstone. And it's when huge blocks of sandstone get moved out from a cliff face due to the pressure in the rock, and it opens up a ravine between the blocks and the cliff, which is a vertical ravine. And in some cases you can walk into this, and it is the height of the cliff. It's just moved away. Now I think
so
about
two
it,
parts of it have sort of separated.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have lots of sandstone in our area.
We do. Now, when I was reading about it, they said it was very much a feature of Nara sandstone. I'm not sure. I've heard of Wienermata sandstone. I've heard of many different sorts, but I didn't know about Nara sandstone. So I did some research, and basically I got more confused as time went by. But what does seem to appear in these cracks, I mean, when you go to look out, sometimes you look at the cliffs and you see that a vertical piece has simply sort of split away from the escarpment.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
And in those ravines grow a specific ecosystem of plants. Because they are protected from fire, because they're dark, they're cool, they're wet. And so you will get a lot of ferns, orchids, all sorts of specific things that can only live in those cracks. But they're big cracks.
Oh.
Very big cracks.
Well, we must, when we're out and about, we'll have to keep our eye out for them.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of something gliding is that it's not going to be a block, is it?
No.
So the word block gliding just I'd never heard it. I studied geology. I'd never heard of it. I'd never heard of it. But there we are. A new phenomena that I shall investigate further.
And yet another one that I'm going to have trouble finding photos for our YouTube channel.
Well, I don't know that you would. No. I don't think you would.
No. And you've got some advice for people.
Well, at this time of year, you probably notice that actually there's a lot of wheel web spiders, golden orb spiders and so forth. They produce really, really large wheel-shaped webs. And when you're walking sometimes, especially if you walk off the beaten track, you can walk straight into them.
Yes,
they
seem to like stringing them across tracks, don't they?
They do. For obvious reasons. I mean, that's, flyways
flight
and whatever.
paths.
And so I've got one piece of advice about what to do about, well, two actually. One is a lot of people carry sticks at a certain time of year and they just wave them in front of their nose constantly, but they do look a bit daft. I have to say. The other thing you can do is if you do hit a web, do not keep moving forward.
As in hit it with your person.
With your person, in your face, whatever. Reverse.
Right.
When in doubt, reverse.
And
it'll probably come unstuck nicely in the web and so on and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll give it a go.
Yep.
And my best piece of advice for avoiding walking into spider webs is if you go out in a group, don't be the one at the front.
That's true. That's true.
We also wanted to talk about who put the scribbles on the Scribbly Gum.
Yes. Now, this is something that's obsessed people for quite a long time, I think. There's been quite a lot of work and very serious work. CSIRO finally found out that it was the work of a tiny, tiny caterpillar that belongs to a moth. Actually, several species of moth. And they're all called Scribbly Gum moths. Surprise, surprise.
Well, that's convenient.
It is convenient. So they lay their eggs on smooth-barked eucalypt trees. There are a number of different species in the highlands. The one that we see most often is sclerophylla. Eucalyptus sclerophylla. That's the one you see quite a lot of. It's a white, not particularly tall tree that grows, and you see the scribbles on them. And what's happened is
clearly.
the female has laid the egg under the old bits of bark, and the eggs have hatched, and the tiny little caterpillars have scribbled around looking for food. They eat sap from the gum tree. And that's how we get scribbly gums.
Yes, isn't it fantastic?
Yeah.
And I read that if you look at these scribbles closely, you'll see that they get bigger. They start off as a narrow little track, and the track gets wider and wider and wider as the caterpillar gets larger and larger and works its way around through the bark. And also that the tree, in the process of healing itself, puts up its nutritious new cells into the track where the caterpillar's been. And so the caterpillar actually turns around and eats through those extra nutritious cells.
Oh, that's why it wriggles back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, it's going back down again because the tree has brought in some healing tissue. So I read.
Fancy that.
Yeah. So if you look at the scribbles, they start off skinny and small. They usually seem to go up the tree, and then they gradually get thicker and thicker until finally the caterpillar's of an adequate age to go to the base of the tree.
Yes, I think they go to the base of the tree while they become a pupa. Because remember, moths and butterflies go through a pupa stage.
Yeah.
And then they come out of that pupa, I suppose, months later as a rather ordinary, brown, unprepossessing, small moth.
Oh, right. But beautifully artistic in that middle stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there you go. That's who put the scribbles on the Scribbly Gum. Let's talk about things happening in February. There's quite a few things happening in the Wollondilly end of the Highlands coming up in February. On Friday, February the 2nd, they've got Bush Care at the Stone Quarry Creek Bush Tucker Garden, and they are there on the first Friday of the month from 10 till 12. Then on Saturday the 3rd of Feb from 8 till 12 at the Robin Davies Wollondilly Community Nursery, they have an open day. This is for Wollondilly people only. Again, a Wollondilly people function on Wednesday the 7th of Feb. They're going to have an introduction to native plant propagation at Robin Davies Wollondilly Community Nursery. On Saturday the 10th, Team Quoll is visiting Thirlmere Lakes. I don't have any details about that, but you'll probably find them on Facebook. On Saturday the 17th of Feb at Wollondilly from 9:30 to 11:30, there's a composting and worm farming workshop at the Robin Davies Wollondilly Community Nursery, again for Wollondilly residents. And then on Thursday the 29th of Feb from 5 till 7 p.m, there's a growing fruit trees information night at the Robin Davies Wollondilly Community Nursery. All those events are for Wollondilly residents, I'm afraid. In Wingecarribee, we've got Land Care at Berrima, which is held on the 2nd and the 4th Tuesdays of the month from 9 till 12 along the Berrima River. And there's also a Land Care Working Bee at the Jib on the 2nd and 3rd Thursday from 9 till 12. If you want any more details about any of those things, contact us at flossandlou@gmail.com. So, that'll do us for this show. I did want to make a particular special thank you mention to Angela Rose, who goes out up in Coaley Vale every Sunday morning and collects rubbish for a number of hours each Sunday. Fantastic work, Angela. I just think you're amazing. You can find us on Highland FM at 8 p.m. on Monday nights or any time on the Highland FM website under podcasts. You can find us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. We're also on YouTube, where we have extra photos and images to go along with our chat. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Our email address is, as I said, flossandlou@gmail.com. Thank you to Highland FM for sponsoring us, in particular Adam, Warren and Harrison. And a big thank you to our contributing photographers, Alan, who I forgot last month, Louise, Linda, Nigel, Mustafa, Anna, Jenny and Graham. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again in March.
Bye now.
Bye.